It's said that evil doesn't die. It waits in silence, in shadow, in sacred places, long abandoned by light. I never used to believe that. Not really. I dealt with murderers. Yes, the kind you can cuff, read rights to, drag to court. I've seen what one human can do to another when hate becomes their gospel. But what I walked into that night wasn't human. And whatever it was, it never left. Before we begin, a quick reminder if you're still breathing by the end of this. Hit subscribe, or comment the word return if you feel something watching you by the end. Now, if you're ready, let me take you back to that church. 15 years ago, a place called St. Luke's Cathedral was sealed off after a fire charred half its interior. The flames revealed something no one could explain: charred pews, melted, stained glass, and a patch of blood beneath the altar in the shape of an eye. The place had already been decommissioned years before that. No congregation, no reason for anyone to be there. Yet, 5 people died in that fire. The official story: squatters caught in an accidental blaze. But something about it never sat right with me. Now, I didn't grow up in Black Hollow, Oregon, but someone close to me did. My cousin Ben. He disappeared around the time of that fire. No one ever connected him to it. There was never a trace. But last month I got a letter. No return address, just 5 words, handwritten on aged paper. It's still inside. Come alone. The postmark, Black Hollow. I packed the basics: flashlight, lockpicks, sidearm, my recorder, a small bag of sage my grandmother gave me long ago just in case, and headed straight for the town no GPS really wants to track. The locals didn't talk much, but the church was still there, locked behind rusted chains and city boards. But the boards were cut. Someone had been inside. Recently, the air changed the second I stepped through that broken doorway. My boots hit scorched wood. Dust rose like ghost. The stained glass was shattered, letting the moon pour through in broken pieces. The altar charred, cracked, still bore the faint trace of something on the stone. Not paint, not soot. It had a dark red sheen like dried blood that never fully dried. And then I saw them. 5 bodies, arranged in a perfect circle around the altar, as if positioned, not scattered, not collapsed, kneeling. Their mouths were stitched shut. Their eyes were wide open. Their hands were pressed together in prayer. Every corpse faced inward, toward the center, and burned into the middle of the altar was that same eye symbol, bigger now, fresher, almost pulsating in the dim light. I couldn't breathe. I've been through dozens of crime scenes, cartel dumps, serial killer nests, ritual murders, but nothing felt like this. Like the air itself didn't want me there. I crouched next to the nearest body male, early 40s. Looked like he hadn't been dead for more than 48 hours. Clean clothes, no ID, no bruises, but his fingernails were torn, as if he had been trying to claw something off his face before he died. Each of them was like that. Torn nails, bloody palms, but the rest of the body pristine. No sign of struggle, no defensive wounds. It was like they had willingly walked in, knelt down, and waited to die. And then I heard it, a whisper, so faint I thought it was wind through the glass. But it wasn't. It said my name, Ethan, not from behind me, not from the front, but below. I backed away from the altar, pulse pounding. My flashlight flickered, once, twice, and then everything went black. There was a second, maybe less, where I felt something brush past me. Cold, heavy, like wet cloth dragging across skin. I turned, half blind, gun drawn, but there was only darkness, only the silence of the dead, and then a smell hit me. Copper, mold, rotten lilies. The flashlight snapped back on, and for just a moment, only a moment, all 5 corpses had turned their heads toward me, their eyes locked on mine, every single one. I blinked, and they were back in place. Had I imagined it, I stumbled out the side door. gasping like I'd surfaced from underwater. My head was pounding. My hands were shaking. I don't shake. I marked the location and sent the photos to a secure drive. But I didn't sleep that night because I kept seeing their faces. That morning, I went to the sheriff's office. Sheriff Waller looked like a man who hadn't slept in years. He glanced at the photos just once, and slid them back to me. "You should leave, Mr. Crow," he said. "They were just found 2 nights ago. Why hasn't this been on the news?" He didn't answer. Instead, he walked to the window, staring out at the mist that never seemed to lift in Black Hollow. "There's things better left buried," he muttered. "Especially here, especially in that church." That's when I knew I wasn't the first to see them, but maybe I'd be the last. The sheriff's warning clung to me like fog on skin. I'd heard that tone before from war vets, from cult survivors. It wasn't fear, it was resignation. Still, I wasn't going to walk away. Something had brought those 5 people to that church. Something had made them kneel, stitch their own mouths shut, or let someone else do it. And whatever it was, it knew my name. I checked into the only motel in town, the Hollow Pine. The receptionist didn't speak when I asked for a room, just slid a key across the counter and locked the drawer of pamphlets behind her, like they weren't meant for me. I spread the photos across the bed, the stitched mouths, the kneeling postures, the red eye. I zoomed in on the symbols near their hands, faint carvings on the wooden floor beneath each corpse. 5 symbols, 5 different shapes. Each one looked like a rune, ancient, maybe protective, maybe not. I cross-referenced them with an old database I'd built, obscure cult iconography, ancient alphabets, shamanic glyphs. One matched, barely, the sigil of displacement, a symbol meant to sever the self from the soul, used in old Southeast Asian rituals to prepare the body as a vessel. It wasn't religious. It was ritualistic. I got a name, Father Jonah R. Bell, former priest at St. Luke's, served until 2005 when the church was shut down. No public record after that, not even a death certificate. The man vanished, but someone had filed a restraining order against him in 2004. A woman named Lorna Howbrook, local, still lived in town. According to the voter registry, I found her house that afternoon. Paint chipped, porch sagging. A wind chime made of bones clacking softly despite the still air. She opened the door before I knocked. "You're Ethan," she said. "I am. You shouldn't have come." She tried to shut the door. I caught it gently, not forcing, just holding. "I think my cousin Ben was involved in the fire. I need answers." The name stopped her. She stared at me, eyes scanning like she was trying to read my bones. "Ben," she said, almost whispering it. "The quiet one. He saw the eye, didn't he?" She let me in. The inside of her house was a shrine of newspaper clippings, burned candles, jars of dark herbs I couldn't identify. A dog barked from a back room. Or maybe it was something else. She poured tea but didn't drink it. Neither did I. 5, she said, pulling out a torn photo. There were 5 before, and 5 again now, always 5. The photo was old, grainy, black and white. 5 young adults, smiling outside the church steps. "That's Father Bell," she said, pointing at the man in the center. The others, they followed him, called themselves the Hollow Watchers, said they heard something under the altar, said it promised them eternity if they watched long enough. I looked closer. One of the others, a kid in a leather jacket, maybe 20, looked familiar. It was Ben. Ben Homanidlam. She shook her head. He was never one of them. He went to save someone, but it was too late. The eye had opened. My skin prickled. "What is the eye?" She hesitated. "It's not a symbol, it's a seal. And when it opens, something sees you back." That night, back at the motel, I dreamed of the altar. Not like before, this time I was on it. I couldn't move. I felt needles in my lips, felt the thread pulling skin shut, felt my knees sink into scorched wood. and then I heard the whisper again. But it wasn't my name. It said, "You've been seen." I woke with blood on my pillow. From my mouth, the stitching had begun. I rushed to the bathroom mirror. My lips were fine, but the taste of iron lingered. Outside, the streetlights flickered, one by one, a pattern, like something walking beneath them. I checked my recorder. I'd left it on during my sleep, as I often did on strange cases. At 3:12 a.m., it captured a sound. A knock, 3 slow knocks, then static, then a voice I didn't recognize. Return the fifth, return the fifth. 5 victims, 5 watchers, 5 symbols, but only 4 were ever buried after the original church fire. The 5th, my cousin, was never found. Ben was the missing piece, and something wanted him back. I dug deeper the next morning. Back at the sheriff's office, Waller was gone. Desk cleared. No record of resignation. No missing persons report filed. It was like he'd never existed. But in the evidence room, someone had left a box on the table, unlocked, unmarked, inside a charred cassette tape, a piece of cloth with that red eye symbol, and a photo of me, standing inside the church, from a high angle, taken the night I arrived. But I had been alone. I stared at the photo for too long. I examined every corner, every shadow, trying to make sense of it. The angle it had to be from the choir loft. But I never went up there. No one did. It was caved in from the fire. And yet the photo was clear, crisp, like it had been taken with a high-end camera just moments after I entered. There I was, flashlight in one hand, standing at the altar, frozen in that moment of realization. But something else caught my eye. In the upper right-hand corner, a silhouette, faint, just behind the broken balustrade, thin, watching. I checked the timestamp on the back. Written in ink, 3:12 a.m., the exact time the voice spoke on the recorder. I grabbed the cassette and headed back to the motel. I'd brought a small tape player with me, old habits from when witnesses only trusted analog. I slid the tape in, pressed play, static, then chanting, low, guttural, repeating the same syllable like a heartbeat. Shall knock. Shall knock. Shall knock. It didn't sound human, or maybe too human raw, strained, like someone whispering with their mouth stitched shut. I fast-forwarded. At minute 6, the chanting stopped. A deep, resonant knock echoed from the speakers. Once, twice, 3 times. And then the eye does not close. The 5th has not returned. You are not him. A pause. Breathing. Then, but you opened the door. The player clicked and stopped. The tape was over. I didn't move. Couldn't. A knock sounded at my motel door. 3 times. I reached for my gun. Waited. Nothing. I swung the door open. No one. Just a white envelope on the ground, sealed with a wax insignia. The same red eye. Inside was a map, hand-drawn, crude. It traced a path from the church into the forest behind the cemetery. No note, no explanation. But beneath the wax seal on the map's edge, something was scribbled hastily in pen. He's still there. I left at once. The forest loomed like a mouth, silent and ancient. The trees leaned in close as I followed the path, the wind absent, the air thick. After an hour, I reached it. A stone structure, not a tomb. Not quite a cellar, something older. There were markings on the entrance carved deep into stone. Symbols I didn't recognize. Until I rotated my flashlight and caught the reflection they matched the ones under the bodies in the church. All 5. This wasn't just a path to the past. It was a gate. I forced the rusted latch, descended stone steps slick with moss and something darker. The air grew cold, then colder still, unnaturally so. My breath fogged in the beam of light. At the bottom a door, wood, rotted but solid, burn marks across its surface, and in its center an eye. Not painted, not etched, carved from bone. I touched it, and the door creaked open on its own. Inside was a single room. No light, no sounds, and in the middle, kneeling, was Ben, or what was left of him. His skin pale, nearly translucent, eyes wide, lips sealed by stitches, but breathing, barely. His hands were clenched, trembling, as if resisting the urge to move. Around him, symbols in ash. Candles long burned out, and dozens of photos scattered across the floor. Photos of the 5 dead in the church, and photos of me, sleeping, eating, walking. My entire life documented, from angles that were impossible. And then he looked at me, not startled, not afraid, but pleading. He raised one trembling hand and pointed, behind me. I turned and saw it. 7 feet tall, draped in black robes, stitched together from what looked like altar cloths and skin. No face, just a wide, bleeding eye carved into where the head should be. It didn't move like a person. It flowed toward me. I raised my gun, fired. The bullets passed through it like smoke. But something struck me, a pressure, a weight. I collapsed. Cold washed over me, like fingers in my veins, pulling memories from behind my eyes. I saw the church, the first 5, the ritual, Ben screaming, clawing at his own face. I saw myself. In that circle, I was never supposed to find this place. The 5th was never meant to return. He was meant to stay, as a seal, and I had just broken it. I don't remember escaping. I don't remember how I got back to town, but when I woke up, it was dawn. Ben was gone, so was the tape, so was the photo, but stitched into my jacket, with black thread barely visible, were 5 words. You opened the eye. Watch. I left Hollow Pines before noon. I didn't tell anyone, didn't check out of the motel, just got in my car and drove through towns that looked the same but somehow felt different. Too quiet, too observed. I thought putting distance between myself and that church would make things clearer. It didn't. The whisper followed me. 3 days passed. Each night, I locked every door, covered every mirror, lit candles like Lorna had. But no matter where I was, something new. The temperature in the room would dip at 3:12 a.m., and I'd hear it the creak of a wooden pew, the snap of a bone-thin finger tapping glass. 3 knocks, always 3 knocks, on the 4th night. I stopped trying to sleep and reviewed everything I had, the symbols, the tape, the photos. One detail haunted me, the stitched mouths. They weren't just symbolic, they were practical. The watchers weren't keeping something out. They were keeping something in. I dug deeper into records, scouring occult texts, private church logs I'd collected over the years. In one of the oldest monastic tomes from Louisiana, I found it a reference to a veil eater, an entity said to live between the soul and the flesh. It waits for a host to break the cycle, for the seal to weaken. For me, according to the text, the only way to contain a veil eater once it's seen you is to complete the ritual, 5 symbols, 5 seals, 1 sacrifice. Someone had to take Ben's place. That's why I was marked. Not to die, to kneel. On the 5th night, I went back to the church. This time, there was no fog, no illusion, just silence. The pews had collapsed, the altar cracked, but the scorched circle in the center remained, like fresh ash that refused to scatter. I stepped in and immediately felt it a pressure in my chest. Behind my eyes, the eye had opened again. I placed the symbols, one by one, in the order they had been etched beneath the bodies. North, south, east, west, center, and I sat in the middle. I didn't light candles. I didn't speak. I just waited. At 3:12 a.m., the air changed. Not colder, still, dead. I heard the first knock, then the second, then the third, and then footsteps, but not on wood, inside my head. A voice followed, not whispered, layered. A chorus made of mouths sealed by fire. You see, you open, you feed. I bit down on the urge to run. My fists clenched, nails cutting palm. I had to finish it. I had to become the fifth. Then something shifted in the shadows beyond the altar. Ben. He stepped forward, not as I saw him before. Stronger, paler, eyes black like the inside of a closed casket. He opened his mouth. The stitches tore, but no blood. Just dust? He pointed to the circle, and I understood he hadn't escaped. He was sent as a vessel. I was never meant to be the fifth. I was meant to release him. He lunged. I barely rolled aside as his hand cracked into the stone, leaving a crater. My pistol was gone. I reached for my pocket, the silver nail Lorna had given me. She said, "If the circle breaks, use this." Ben screamed a sound not made by lungs. I drove the nail into his shoulder. He didn't bleed, he cracked. Like ceramic, light spilled from the wound. Not white, red. The same red as the eye. He grabbed my throat, and I saw things I wasn't meant to see. Cities made of mouths, skies stitched with ribs, time looping like thread pulled through a corpse. And then, a second scream. From behind me, Lorna. She stood at the doorway, holding a rusted censer. Burning incense I recognized only from ancient rites, mugwort, bloodroot. Something else I couldn't name. Ben staggered. The symbols on the floor glowed. I kicked free, slammed my palm into the central sigil. The ritual had begun again. But this time, I wasn't offering a sacrifice. I was sealing one. The wind roared inward. Ben convulsed, light pouring from every crack. His voice, or what wore it, howled not in pain, but in fury. "You are the door." I spoke the only word I remembered from the tape, "shall knock," and he shattered. The eye closed, and the light vanished. Silence. I awoke outside the church. Lorna was gone. The building, reduced to ash. No authorities, no reports, just silence. But stitched into my hand, real stitches this time, were 5 threads, forming a symbol I hadn't seen before. Not a seal, a warning. I went home, but the silence never left. Some nights, I wake at 3:12 a.m., with the taste of ash in my mouth and a weight on my chest. Sometimes I hear my name whispered not in my room, but from the walls. And sometimes, I knock back, 3 times, just to see if it answers. They say closure is a myth, that no matter how deep you bury something, it festers. Rot spreads in silence, and sometimes, the things we seal away aren't dead, just waiting. 3 weeks passed. I tried to return to work routine cases, missing persons, cheating spouses, the kind of mundane mysteries that once gave me solace. But they all felt hollow. I couldn't concentrate, couldn't sleep. Each case bled into the next. Each face began to blur with the 5, and the eye, always the eye. Even now, I feel it. Watching, then the letters started. No return address, no postage, just slipped under my door at night. Each envelope sealed in red wax. Inside photographs, not of victims, of me, standing in line at a coffee shop, in my car, staring at my bedroom mirror. Always at night, always from impossible angles. Sometimes I'm asleep in the pictures, but the worst was the 3rd envelope, because it didn't contain a photo. It contained a mirror, just a small shard. And when I looked into it, I didn't see myself. I saw Ben, smiling, mouth unstitched, eyes wide and hollow. Behind him, rows of people, faceless, kneeling in a circle, and in the center, burning with a flame that made no smoke. That red eye, I dropped the shard. It didn't break. I buried it in a metal box, sealed it with salt, and tossed it in the river. But that night, at 3:12, I found another shard under my pillow. This one was warm. That's when I realized the ritual never ended, because I never sealed the 5th. Ben wasn't the final seal. I am, and I broke myself open. I turned to Lorna for answers, but she was gone. Her number disconnected. her house abandoned. Her protection symbols had been carved off the walls, not removed, but scratched out, violently, as if something had clawed its way through her defenses. I began finding ash near my windows, circles, symbols, sometimes footprints, bare but too large to be human. Each time I erased them, they reappeared the next night, always perfectly aligned, as if waiting for me to stand in the center. One night I gave in. I stood there, in the circle, barefoot. At exactly 3:12 a.m., the room dimmed, not dark, just gray. Time slowed. The walls rippled, like fabric in windless air. And then I heard it. You closed the door, but left the key. I collapsed. The floor beneath me no longer wood but stone. Altar stone, the church again, but deeper. Beneath it, the catacombs. The air tasted like burnt incense and rusted iron. I was no longer dreaming. I was being called back, dragged, my body limp, but my mind awake. In the distance, I saw torches flickering, hundreds of them, forming a tunnel. At the end stood a door, familiar, wooden, burnt, and behind it, breathing, rhythmic, not like lungs, like a heartbeat. I moved toward it. The walls of the tunnel were made of bones, and in the gaps between the skulls, eyes stared back. Not all human, some too large, some vertical, one blinking sideways. When I reached the door, it opened on its own. Inside Ben, again, but now. His body was cracked, fractured like porcelain left in fire too long. He held a book, not ancient, modern, my notebook. Every case I'd ever worked, every theory, every name, he dropped it. Pages scattered, catching fire mid-air, and he spoke, but not with his voice. With mine, "You're not a hunter anymore." He stepped forward. "You're the hunted." He opened his chest. Inside, instead of organs, mirrors. Each one reflected me, but not as I am. One showed me dead in the church, one kneeling in the circle, one hanging from a tree with my eyes carved out, and one smiling, stitches across my mouth, eyes black, watching. I woke up screaming. Blood on my hands, not mine. I was in my apartment, but the mirrors were gone, replaced with photographs of the altar, and in each one, I was kneeling. Even now, I don't know if I ever truly left Hollow Pines, or if Hollow Pines followed me home. Maybe that's what the ritual really does. It doesn't just summon the eye, it plants it inside you. So when you look into darkness, you're not looking into it. It's looking out, through you. There's something terrifying about silence when you know it's not supposed to be quiet. Like when you're standing in your kitchen and the refrigerator stops humming, or when you realize you haven't heard a single bird outside all day. That's the kind of silence I've been living with since that night. Not peaceful, not empty. Watched. I stopped taking cases altogether. Boarded up the windows. Covered every reflective surface. Lines of salt across every threshold. Incense burning nonstop. But the silence stayed. And then, 2 nights ago, it broke. I woke up to the sound of crying. Not sobbing, just soft, breathless weeping, coming from inside my closet. I didn't move, didn't breathe, but the sound grew louder. Until it wasn't crying anymore, it was laughing, and then it stopped. The closet door creaked open on its own, empty except for the mirror. Not mine, I never owned one like this. Old oval, cracked down the center. I stared, and this time, it stared back. My reflection was moving, but I wasn't. It reached toward the glass, pressed a hand against it, skin pale, stitched at the wrist. Then it smiled and whispered something, not into the mirror, into my ear. 3 words. Let me out. I ran, didn't grab a bag, didn't grab my phone, just ran. Now, I'm somewhere along Route 12 sleeping in the back seat of my car. But even here, I find ash on the hood every morning, symbols traced in the dust on the windshield. Sometimes, fingerprints on the inside of the glass. They don't match mine. It doesn't matter how far I drive, because it's not about location anymore. It's about me. I'm the circle. I'm the seal. And the thing behind the eye is waiting for it to break. Last night, I had a dream. Not like before, lucid, precise. I was in a motel room I'd never seen, but somehow recognized. Everything covered in plastic. The wallpaper peeled. A low hum vibrated the walls like something buried deep in the pipes was breathing. On the bed sat a child, barefoot, facing away, humming a lullaby I couldn't quite place, until it looped. Backward, the child turned, and I saw my own face younger, blood dripping from the corners of stitched lips, and it said, "You asked to know the truth." Then it held out a hand. Inside its palm was a small red thread, just one. And I knew if I pulled it, everything would unravel. I reached out, touched it, and woke up choking. Something had shoved ash into my mouth. Real ash, burnt wood, bone, salt. The taste lingered all day, even now. I can still feel the grit between my teeth. I think I know what's happening. Not possession, not haunting. Replacement. Every time I fall asleep, the eye replaces a little more of me. A memory, a scar, a sound I used to know. Last week, I found a photo on my phone of my parents. I don't remember their faces. I don't even know if they're still alive. And worst of all, I'm not sure if they ever were. So here I am, typing this out. Not as a warning, not as a confession. As proof, because soon, I won't remember any of this. Soon, I'll forget how to speak the words that banish it. Soon, the eye will open through me. And when that happens, someone will find me. Just like they found Ben. Mouth stitched, eyes wide, kneeling in the ash. And maybe they'll ask the same question I did. What happened here? And they'll start looking, searching, and piece by piece, the circle will begin again. Thank you for staying with me until the end of the story. And hey, if you're still breathing, don't forget to subscribe for more cases that were never meant to be opened. And if you ever find a circle of ash outside your door, whatever you do, don't step inside. Sleep well, if you can,